I'm Genevieve, 35, female. I live in a quiet apartment downtown, surrounded by books on art history and the faint, pleasant smell of linseed oil from a restoration project. As an art appraiser, my life is about finding the hidden value in things, separating genuine masterpieces from clever forgeries. It's a skill I never thought I'd have to apply to my own family. For most of my life, I was the reliable, responsible, and utterly invisible daughter, while my younger sister was the masterpiece my mother proudly displayed to the world. I was about to find out exactly how much it cost to maintain her gallery. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Growing up, my role in the family was clearly defined. I was the supporting frame, and my sister, Ashley, was the vibrant canvas. 7 years my junior, she was bubbly, beautiful, and effortlessly charming. Everything my quiet, studious nature was not. My mother, Karen, saw her as a reflection of her own best self. My achievements were met with a polite nod. Ashley's were celebrated with parades. When I won a statewide scholarship for university, my mom said, "That's nice, dear. Now, can you help me pick out a dress for Ashley's prom? It has to be perfect." I remember the sting of those words, the casual dismissal that categorized my success as a footnote in the grand story of my sister. My father, David, a retired history teacher, was a quieter presence. He saw the imbalance but subscribed to a philosophy of keeping the peace. "Your mother just gets excited, Jen," he'd say, a placating hand on my shoulder. "She doesn't mean anything by it." But she did. Her actions painted a clear picture over 3 decades. My 21st birthday was a quiet dinner at a local Italian place. Ashley's was a weekend trip to a vineyard with 10 of her closest friends. When I put the down payment on my first apartment, my mom questioned the expense. When Ashley decided she wanted to be an event planner after half a semester of community college, my mother signed a loan for her to start a business that mostly planned parties for her own friends at a family discount. I became an art appraiser because I loved the stories objects told and the quiet certainty of facts. I could look at a painting and, through careful research and examination, determine its history, its authenticity, its worth. There was no favoritism in my work, only evidence. It was a stark contrast to my family life, where value was assigned based on whim and charisma. I learned early on to be self-sufficient. I paid my own way through a master's program, built my career from the ground up, and never asked my parents for a dime. In fact, the financial flow always seemed to go the other way. "Genevieve, can you pick up the cake for your sister's get? Together, get the nice one from the French bakery." My mother would ask, "Ashley's car needs new tires, and she's a little short this month. You don't mind helping out, do you, sweetie?" I never minded, or rather, I told myself I didn't. It was easier than causing a fight. It was the price of admission for a peaceful family dinner. I was the reliable one, the financial backstop, the one who never caused any trouble. I was the responsible daughter, but never the one she was proud of. This dynamic was the wallpaper of our family home, so present that I had almost stopped noticing it. The pattern was familiar, faded, and deeply ingrained. But wallpaper, no matter how old, can be stripped away, revealing the crumbling plaster underneath. The catalyst for this renovation was, fittingly, another grand celebration for Ashley. Her 28th birthday was approaching, and my mother was determined to make it an event for the ages. The party was a monument to Ashley. My mother, with Ashley's expert event planner guidance, had rented out a chic rooftop lounge overlooking the city. A string quartet played in the corner, a champagne tower shimmered under the fairy lights, and a guest list of over 100 people mingled, all there to celebrate the golden child. I stood near the edge of the terrace, nursing a glass of sparkling water, feeling more like a museum guard than a guest. I had, of course, been tasked with several duties. I'd picked up the 5-tiered custom cake, coordinated with the valet service, and even fronted the deposit for the venue on my credit card weeks ago, a sum my mother had assured me would be handled later. I watched Ashley flit through the crowd, a vision in a glittering rose gold dress. She'd hug someone, laugh her tinkling laugh, and gesture vaguely in my direction, saying, "Oh, that's my sister, Genevieve. She's the smart one." It was her standard line, a backhanded compliment that simultaneously praised and dismissed me, framing me as the boring, academic bookend to her vibrant life. My mother trailed her like a lady, in waiting, beaming with a kind of fierce, possessive pride that was almost blinding. She would grab the arm of a friend and say, "Isn't she just incredible, my Ashley? She has such a gift for bringing people together." About an hour into the festivities, my mother tapped a glass for a toast. The crowd quieted down, all eyes turning to her. My father stood beside her, looking uncomfortable, as he always did in these moments of grand pronouncements. "I just want to say a few words about my beautiful daughter, Ashley," my mother began, her voice thick with emotion. "From the moment she was born, she has been a light. She fills every room with joy and laughter. She built a successful business from nothing but her own talent and charm, and she has a heart as golden as her hair." She paused, looking directly at Ashley, her eyes welling with tears. "Ashley, watching you grow has been the greatest joy of my life. You make me so proud every single day. You are everything I could have ever hoped for in a daughter. She's the daughter I'm proud of." The words hung in the air. Not one of the daughters I'm proud of, just the daughter. It was so blatant, so absolute, that a ripple of awkward silence passed through the guests closest to me before they broke into polite applause. I felt my face flush, a hot wave of shame and anger washing over me. I wanted to disappear. I felt the familiar sting, but this time it was sharper, a surgeon's scalpel instead of a dull ache. I saw my dad glance at me with a pained, apologetic look, but he said nothing. He just stood there, a silent partner to my erasure. I slipped away from the crowd, needing a moment to breathe. The toast was the climax of the evening, but the true finale was yet to come. Later, as the party was winding down and I was helping to gather Ashley's mountain of gifts, my mother approached me. She was still glowing from her speech. "Wasn't that just a perfect night?" she sighed happily. Ashley was so happy. "It was a big party," I said, my voice flat. "Well, she deserves it," my mother said, her tone defensive. Then she pulled a thick, folded stack of papers from her purse. It was the final invoice from the venue, the caterer, the florist, the musicians. She smoothed it out and handed it to me. "Here you go, sweetie. I added it all up for you." I stared at the paper, then at her. "What is this?" "It's the bill, silly," she said with a little laugh as if I were a child. "Your gift to your sister. You know how tight things are, and you're doing so well. It's all taken care of, right?" I looked down at the final figure at the bottom of the page. My heart hammered against my ribs. The total came to $1,980. I drove home in a daze, the invoice sitting on the passenger seat like an accusation. The city lights blurred through my windshield, each one a tiny spotlight on my humiliation. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, the silence of my home a stark contrast to the noise of the party. The weight of the evening, of that toast, of the casually delivered bill, finally crashed down on me. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what the money represented. It was the price tag on my mother's love, and I was the one expected to pay it for someone else to receive it. Finally, I switched on a lamp and spread the papers across my coffee table. My professional instincts took over, and I began to examine the invoice with the detached precision of an appraiser assessing an object. This wasn't just a bill, it was a document, a piece of evidence. And it told a story of breathtaking entitlement: $850 for the rooftop venue rental, $475 for artisanal charcuterie and past hors d'oeuvres, $250 for the champagne tower, featuring a Prosecco I knew for a fact Ashley didn't even like but thought looked good on Instagram. $150 for the florist for arrangements of peonies and hydrangeas that would be wilted by morning. $125 for the custom cake I had picked up myself, a monstrosity of pink buttercream and gold leaf. $130 for miscellaneous service fees and gratuities. Total $980. Each line item was a small betrayal. I thought about my own 28th birthday. I had spent it with two close friends at a quiet wine bar. The bill was maybe $100, and I had paid it myself. I had never expected or demanded a grand gesture. All I had ever wanted was a quiet acknowledgement, a simple "I'm proud of you too." Instead, I was handed the check for a celebration of my own inadequacy in my mother's eyes. The anger began as a low simmer and quickly boiled into a clarifying rage. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of similar transactions, both emotional and financial. I was the family's utility, reliable, functional, and taken for granted. Ashley was the art, praised, valued, and carefully maintained. And my mother was the curator, who had decided that one piece was priceless and the other was just part of the building's infrastructure. I thought about the down payment I was saving for, the one my mother knew about. That dollar one, 980, was a significant chunk of it. It represented months of careful budgeting, of saying no to small luxuries for myself. And she had, without a moment's hesitation, allocated it to my sister's party. She hadn't asked, she had informed, she had presented me with the bill for my own subjugation. That night, something inside me shifted. The quiet, accommodating Genevieve, the one who always kept the peace, began to recede. In her place, a cold, methodical anger started to take root. My father's passive regret and my mother's blatant favoritism were two sides of the same counterfeit coin. I had spent my entire life trying to earn their approval, trying to be good enough, quiet enough, generous enough. I finally realized it was a fraudulent auction. No matter how high I bid, the prize was already promised to someone else. I looked at the invoice again, an itemized list of my sister's celebration. Fine, I thought. If we were going to start keeping a record of expenses, then it was time for a full and complete audit. I was an appraiser, after all. It was time to assess the true value of everything and present an invoice of my own. The frame was done supporting the canvas. It was time to show them what it was worth on its own. The next few weeks were a period of silent, meticulous research. My mother called twice, both times to ask if I had taken care of that bill yet. Because the venue had sent her a reminder, I replied with a placid, "I'm handling it," giving no indication of the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. My work as an appraiser had trained me to be a detective of details. I could spend days referencing auction records or analyzing the chemical composition of a pigment to verify a single painting. I decided to apply that same rigorous methodology to my own family's financial history. My first stop was my father. I invited him for coffee, choosing a neutral cafe halfway between our homes. He was relieved, probably thinking I wanted to talk through my feelings about the party. He was right, but not in the way he expected. "Dad," I started after the initial pleasantries, "I want to talk about the party bill." He winced. "I know, Jen, your mother. She gets carried away. It wasn't right of her to just hand that to you." "It's not just about the party," I said, my voice even. "This has been happening for a long time, hasn't it? Me being the family emergency fund for Ashley." He shifted in his seat, unable to meet my eyes. He stared into his black coffee as if it held the answers. "Ashley has always needed a bit more help," he mumbled. "She's not as practical as you are." "Practicality doesn't cover a business loan, Dad," I said quietly. He looked up, surprised. "How did you know about that?" "Mom mentioned it once, a few years ago. She said you signed a loan for Ashley to start her business." He nodded slowly. "We did. She had a dream. And when she defaulted on the first 6 payments, who made them so it wouldn't affect your credit?" My father's face paled. He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and astonishment. "Your mother told me she'd used her savings. She told me Ashley would pay me back the next month," I replied. "That was 4 years ago. It was over $3,000, Dad. Then there were the car repairs, the security deposit on her first apartment, the plane ticket for her trip to Cancun because she was so stressed out." I kept a rough tally in my head, but I decided it was time to make it official. I slid a small, leather-bound notebook across the table. For the past week, I had gone through my old bank statements, credit card bills, and emails. I had referenced dates and amounts. It was all there in my neat, precise handwriting. A ledger of my sister's life, funded by me. The total, not including the recent party, was a staggering $8,450. My father stared at the number, his mouth slightly agape. He was a retired accountant. He understood the language of ledgers. This was not just a few $100s here and there. This was a systematic, long-term transfer of my earnings to my sister, orchestrated by our mother. "I never knew," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Genevieve, I am so sorry I've been asleep at the wheel." "I know," I said, and for the first time I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He was not a malicious man, just a passive one. He had chosen the path of least resistance, and that path had led directly through my bank account. "But I'm not here for an apology. I'm here for your help. I need access to the homeowner's insurance documents, specifically the riders for Mom's valuables." He looked confused. "Her jewelry, the silverware. Why, I'm building a case," I said. "Every appraiser needs to know the provenance and the declared value of the items they're assessing. Mom has always talked about her heirlooms. Her grandmother's ring, the silver set from her wedding, the porcelain figurines. She assigns them immense value. I need to see what they're officially worth." My father understood then. He saw the glint in my eye was not tears, but determination. He nodded, a new resolve on his face. He had been a silent accomplice for too long. "I'll get them for you," he said. This quiet audit was over. The appraisal was about to begin, with the ledger of my financial contributions complete and the insurance documents from my father in hand. The final piece of my plan began to take shape. It wouldn't be a screaming match or a dramatic confrontation in the traditional sense. My mother didn't respond to emotion. She responded to status, appearance, and value. So I would speak to her in the only language she truly understood. I would present my findings as a formal appraisal, a professional, undeniable document of worth. My stage would be Thanksgiving dinner. It was the next major family gathering, an event my mother orchestrated with military precision. It was her annual showcase of family perfection. This year, the exhibit would have a surprising new addition. For the next month, I dedicated my evenings to the project. I treated it like a high-stakes commission. I purchased a beautiful, custom-made portfolio with a dark leather cover. Inside, I used high-quality archival paper, the kind I use for my most important clients. The first section of the portfolio was titled An Audit of Interfamily Financial Support, Ashley J. Miller, Beneficiary. Page after page, I detailed every single loan, bailout, and unreimbursed expense. Each entry was dated and described from the $3 to $100 for defaulted business loan payments to the $75 for an emergency manicure before a date. At the end of this section was a final audited total, $8,450. Then I added the party bill, bringing the grand total to a stunning $10,430. The second section was the masterstroke. It was titled An Appraisal of the Karen Miller Collection of Heirlooms and Fine Goods. This is where my father's documents were invaluable. My mother had always spoken of her possessions as if she were the curator of a small, private museum. There was her grandmother's diamond ring, which she claimed was practically a royal jewel. There was the sterling silver flatware set, a wedding gift she said was irreplaceable. And there were her prized porcelain shepherdess figurines, which were delicate antiques. I tackled each one with professional detachment. Her grandmother's ring, the insurance rider listed it as a 0. 4-carat diamond with significant clouding and a yellow tint. The setting was 10-carat gold, not the 18-carat she claimed. Based on current market value for similar estate pieces, its value was roughly $500, not priceless and certainly not royal. The sterling silver set, I knew from family dinners that the markings were wrong. A quick search of the pattern name she was so proud of confirmed it was a high-quality silver plate, not sterling. Its resale value was perhaps $300 for the entire 12-person set. It was quite literally replaceable. The porcelain figurines, my father had sent me photos. They were not 18th century Mason, as she liked to hint. They were 1950s mass-produced pieces from a department store. Their collective value on the collectibles market was about $100, mostly for nostalgia. I documented everything. I included photographs, market comparisons, and official definitions of terms like sterling versus silver plate. The final page of this section was a summary table. On one side was the perceived and stated value, emotional/anecdotal. On the other was the current fair market value professional appraisal. The discrepancy was immense. The total appraised value of her most prized possessions was less than $1,000. The final document in the portfolio was a single sheet of paper. It was an invoice, beautifully designed with my own professional letterhead. It read, "Invoice for services rendered and funds advanced to Karen and Ashley Miller from Genevieve Miller, fine art and asset appraisal items. Total undocumented interest-free loans and financial support advanced to Ashley Miller 2018-2025, $10,430. 00 emotional labor, financial management and logistical coordination services estimated over 15 years, priceless but unreciprocated. Amount due $10,430. 00 I made 3 copies of the entire portfolio, one for my mother, one for my sister, and one for my father. As I closed the cover on the final book, a sense of calm washed over me. This wasn't about revenge in the fiery, destructive sense. It was about clarity. It was about presenting the truth in a form, so clear and undeniable that it could not be dismissed or ignored. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away, the stage was set, the curtain was about to rise. Thanksgiving Day arrived crisp and cold. I walked into my parents' house feeling strangely serene. The familiar scent of roasting turkey and my mother's overpowering potpourri filled the air. Ashley was already there, regaling my mother with a story about a difficult client, while my father quietly watched a football game in the living room. My mother greeted me with a tight, expectant smile. "Genevieve, you're here. Have you taken care of that little bill from the party yet?" "It's been handled, Mom," I said, my voice smooth as glass. I placed a beautifully wrapped hostess gift on the counter, an expensive bottle of wine they could all enjoy. Then I placed the 3 leather portfolios next to it. "What are those?" Ashley asked, her eyes lighting up. "More presents, in a way," I said. "It's something I've been working on, a family project. I thought we could look at it after dinner." Dinner was the usual performance. My mother praised Ashley's contributions to the meal. A simple green bean casserole, as a culinary triumph, while barely noticing the complex dessert I had spent hours making. I didn't let it bother me. I simply observed, like a critic watching the final act of a play I already knew the ending to. When the plates were cleared and everyone was nursing coffee, I went to the counter and retrieved the portfolios. I handed one to my mother, one to Ashley, and one to my father. As you all know, my work is in appraisal. I began, my voice steady and clear. "It's about understanding the true value of things. Lately, I've felt there's been a significant discrepancy in our family's accounting, so I decided to undertake a comprehensive appraisal. Please open it." My father opened his immediately, his expression somber. He knew what was coming. Ashley, however, opened hers with a flutter of excitement, as if it were a photo album of herself. Her smile slowly vanished as she turned the first few pages of the financial audit. My mother, however, was the main audience. She opened the portfolio with a confused look, her brow furrowing as she read the title page. She flicked through the itemized list of expenses for Ashley, her mouth tightening into a thin line. "What is the meaning of this, Genevieve? This is private family business, is it?" I countered gently. "It became my business every time you asked me to cover for Ashley. It became my business when you handed me a nearly $2,000 bill for her party. Please keep reading. The second section is where my professional expertise really comes into play." Her eyes scanned the appraisal of her heirlooms. I watched as her entire sense of self-worth, so deeply tied to these objects, began to crumble. Her face went from confused to indignant to pale, silver plate. She whispered, horrified. "That can't be right. The jeweler told me. The jeweler sold you a silver-plated set, Mom." I said calmly, "There's a significant difference, just as there's a significant difference between a sentimental story and a certified valuation." Ashley, meanwhile, had reached the final total in her copy, $10,430. "That's insane. I never took that much from you. The records are all there," I said, gesturing to the pages. "Dates, amounts, bank transfers, it's all just. Facts." Finally, my mother reached the last page, the invoice. She stared at it, her hands trembling slightly. The room was utterly silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. "You're billing me," she finally said, her voice a dangerous whisper. "You are billing your own mother. I'm clearing the ledger," I replied, my voice unwavering. "You handed me a bill for $1,980 for a party where you announced to 100 people that Ashley was the only daughter you were proud of. I paid it. So please, deduct that from the total. The new amount you and Ashley owe me is $8,450. I'm not expecting a check. I'm just clarifying the balance. This is my resignation as the family bank." The silence that followed my statement was profound. It was the heavy, loaded quiet that comes after a foundational truth has been irrevocably spoken. For a moment, no one moved. Then the explosion came, exactly as I had anticipated. "How dare you?" my mother shrieked, slamming the portfolio shut. Her face was mottled with rage. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in my own home. What have you done for me, Mom?" I asked, my voice still quiet, a stark contrast to her hysteria. "You raised me, yes, but in my adult life, you have treated me not as a daughter, but as a resource, a utility to be used for Ashley's benefit." Ashley started to cry, fat, theatrical tears rolling down her cheeks. "I can't believe you would be so petty, Jen. You know I've been struggling. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me." This was their script, the one they had always used. When faced with facts, they defaulted to accusations of jealousy and ingratitude. But for the first time, their words had no power over me. They were like counterfeit bills. They looked the part, but under scrutiny, they were worthless. Before I could respond, my father stood up. He placed his portfolio deliberately on the dining room table. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but carried the weight of years of silence. "That's enough, Karen," he said, looking at my mother. "She's right. We've done this to her. I've stood by and let it happen, and that's on me. But it stops tonight." He turned to Ashley. "And you, Ashley, you are a grown woman. It is time you started acting like one. Your sister's generosity was not a blank check." The shock on my mother's and sister's faces was absolute. Their silent, passive ally had finally spoken. He had seen the evidence and had chosen to validate the truth. His words were the final, official stamp on my appraisal. I didn't need to say another word. My exhibit was complete. I stood up and collected my coat and my purse. "Genevieve, where are you going?" my mother demanded. "You can't just walk away." "I'm not walking away," I said, turning to face her one last time. "I'm closing the account. The balance is clear. I don't owe you anything. My financial support, my unquestioning availability, my peacekeeping silence. You've spent it all. Goodbye." I walked out of that house and didn't look back. The drive home was different this time. There was no anger, no confusion. There was only a profound sense of lightness. I had spent 35 years carrying the weight of my family's expectations and imbalances. Now I was free. The following weeks were quiet. My father called me once to tell me he had moved into the guest room. He said he and my mother had a lot to work through, but he was done pretending. He told me he was proud of me, and for the first time the words didn't feel like a hollow courtesy. They felt earned. My mother and Ashley have not contacted me. I see through social media that Ashley is now promoting a budget-friendly lifestyle full of DIY projects. I imagine her line of credit has been cut off. I used the money I had been saving, all of it, to put a down payment on a small but beautiful condominium in a historic part of the city. It's mine, every square inch of it. I find my peace not in family gatherings, but in the quiet, methodical work I love. I assess the value of things for a living, but I finally learned how to correctly appraise my own, and I can tell you with certified professional certainty, my self-worth is priceless.